Hey, Lady Bosses. I am Laura Caroon, and I'm excited today to talk about a positive spin on politics. Yes, politics. It's election season, and as much as we maybe all wish that we could take a break and just turn some of it off, this year's election is so incredibly important. So much of what's on the ballot directly affects the lives of women in our communities and country, so we need to be paying attention. In 2019, a study done by the Center for American Women in Politics at Rutgers University found that women, who constitute more than half of the population, have cast almost 10 million more votes than men in recent elections. In fact, the number of female voters has exceeded the number of male voters in every presidential election since 1964. That sounds pretty cool, but what does it actually mean? Well, it means that there's real power in women's votes. Women will be a deciding factor in what happens in our future, which is honestly pretty incredible to think about. And that brings me to our next guest. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Talise Murray of Supermajority. Talise is a political strategist, community organizer, and DEI advocate based in Lansing, Michigan. Coming to Supermajority with a background in nonprofit and academic advocacy surrounding the advancement of the protected classes, she serves as the regional organizing director for the Midwest. Most recently, she served as the assistant director for a nonprofit focused on educating and mobilizing collegiate students around elections. Talise has passion for protecting the rights of women and children through intentional advocacy. As a graduate of Michigan State University, Talise holds a degree in comparative culture and politics with a research focus on the advancement of women and LGBTIA+ individuals. After work, she trains in martial arts and enjoys visiting friends around the world. She also sits on the board of the Michigan Center for Civic Education and the advisory board for the Secretary of State Collegiate Student Advisory Task Force. In short, she's a badass, and I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. It is incredible to be talking with you guys today. And honestly, I just love always being able to reach out and talk to groups of badass women. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. So I want to dive right in. What does the term supermajority mean when it comes to elections? And why is this good news for women?
So, Laura, you kind of hit it nail on the head a little bit ago. So since the 1960s, women have been the majority of voters. And that means more than 51% for every election since the 1960s have been represented by women. And we know in the last 5 years, women are the majority of donors, volunteers, and activists. And yet at no point in these last 50 years have women been adequately represented at any level of government. And so here at Supermajority, we're doing our part and everything we can to ensure women have the information and resources they need to participate in the upcoming election and demand that their voice and their vote be heard at every level. And that's a huge thing because we know one of the things for women that's so hard for us to always remember and mobilize is that we do have collective power because we haven't seen it reflected in politics up until now. And so it's such a great thing because we are now seeing cohorts of 50,000 women coming together to say, we matter, our voices matter, and we're going to do that with our communities as well. We have had volunteers from every state. We have volunteers in Abu Dhabi and Brazil, texting and calling and writing letters to people in throughout the US to tell them your voice matters, your vote matters, and you are important. And that type of empowerment and encouragement, along with the raw details of just when is my voter registration deadline and how do I find my polling location, those together makes a huge difference in how our communities mobilize ahead of this critical election.
So I gotta say that the first time that I saw Supermajority pop up like on my Instagram feed or something, I was like, yes, I am in. This is awesome. I'm excited to see where these people go. So can you tell me a little bit about the story of Supermajority and how it got started?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Supermajority and the Supermajority Education Fund was founded to harness the power of women of all races, backgrounds, and ages to meet the challenge and energy of this moment. right? Women will decide this election, and women will decide where our country goes forward from here. And in line with that, we are co-founded by some of the most badass women in the country. Cecile Richards, Ajin Poe, Alicia Garza, Jess Morales Riquetto, Catherine Granger, DeAndre Shepling, and more. Supermajority is a women equity organization made up of women from all backgrounds, races, and ages, who we as a staff reflect our mission and we reflect what we ask others to do. And we're coming together to create a future where we see and we are treated truly equitable. And so Supermajority's goal and everything is to connect women with each other, because our goal isn't to tell you who to vote for or what to do. It's to build on our collective power and provide the information and resources that we need to take action in our own communities with our own friends and families and take that to the voting booth. This fall, I just really need to brag about this. We heard it this morning and I'm still so excited about it. This fall, we've reached over 5 million women across the US, and we've been able to build that community and say, hey, here's your voter information. Hey, here's the resources that you need. And the Midwest is so key. I think that's one of the best things about living in the Midwest is your elections are always exciting because they matter not just for your state and your city, but for the direction of this country. And so Supermajority was founded to meet that moment. This is a moment unlike anything we've seen in history, where we're seeing 1 in 5 women have participated in marches or rallies in the last 4 years, where 1 in 5 people have donated to political organizations and nonprofits. We are seeing women mobilize and they gather together in ways we have not seen in the last decade. And so Supermajority is here to meet that moment and meet that energy to say, we're in this with you and we're in this for the long run.
I thought that people were like invested and excited about the 2016 election, but I mean, the 2020 election just blown that out of the water.
Yeah.
So incredible to see so many people using their voice and getting involved and making sure that other people are, on that path with them.
Absolutely. It's incredible to see. I remember, similar to you, I was like, oh, this is the craziest an election can get, where everyone was talking about the election. Everyone knew like where their polling location was and what was this. And now in 2020, it's like 10 times as much. And it is incredible. It is exciting. We had over 500 women run for Congress in 2020. It is just constantly building. And I'm so excited to see where we go in the future with this.
So Supermajority has put together this vision that includes 5 majority rules. Can you tell us about these rules and how they came to be?
Yeah, so the Supermajority rules are a collection of research and conversations and just like interactions with 75,000 women from all 50 states, from our co-founders and from leaders in the area, to say, what do women need? What do women want? And these were kind of spearheaded by those women. So we reached out and said, what are your concerns? When you are having this conversation and going through life, what are your biggest concerns? And what do you want to make sure you see reflected from your elected officials and from your communities? And so those 75,000 women and our research and all of our conversations led us to these 5 rules. Our lives are safe. Our bodies are respected. Our work is valued. Our families are supported, and our government represents us. And all of that comes together just to say, as I mentioned before, there is no level of government where women are adequately represented. And so from the school board to the White House, we want to make sure that women are represented and are heard. And to say that the work that women do, whether it's education, caregiving, or, caring for their children, it is respected and valued and with dignity in our society. That our healthcare system takes our needs seriously, from treatment to research, to the ability to make decisions for yourself, to the fact that you just want our bodies and our environments to be safe from intimidation and violence, whether it's at home or work or in our neighborhoods. And to be able to say that no matter what your race, your ethnicity, your background, or age is, that those are all important and all valid, and that should be outlined in your experience. And so those are the majority rules when we say these are the things that matter to women, and these are the things that we want to make sure we're amplifying and we're pushing forward in all of our work.
I love that. And those are all things that I want. And I feel like those are things that we don't, like, we all want and we need, but we don't talk about them in that way. So
Absolutely.
how do we take these things that people kind of, shove aside as women's issues and make them human issues and make them things that everyone cares about?
Okay, so I'm laughing because that question, even though it's an entirely fair question and it makes sense, to me, it's always so insane because women are the super majority of this nation. So there is nothing that's a women's issue. Everything is just a human issue, whether it's education, healthcare, whether it's economic stability, everything is just a people issue, right? Women are the majority of Americans. And before the pandemic, we were the majority of the labor force. So there is no such thing as a women's issue. Women touch every single part of this country, and therefore our country must prioritize the issues that are impacting us. And it's, I can't amplify that enough, right? Like women experience higher rates of unemployment and disenfranchisement during pandemic. We know that women have to make decisions between their family and work at higher rates. We know that women are more likely to mobilize around these issues. There's nothing that's just a women's issue. And then to put it in more research and concrete facts for you, because people like me, I love the research, I love facts. Supermajority and Supermajority Education Fund did research of women of color across the country. And this is what women want leaders all across our country at every level to know are the most pressing issues and are demanding that we have actual plans for. We need to end the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't think there's a single person that says this is not impacting their lives in some way. We have to end it. We have to combat racial injustice head on and say enough is enough. And we have to also protect the Affordable Care Act because we know that women are the most vulnerable when we start talking about loss of health care. I mean, until a couple of years ago, pregnancy was considered a pre-existing condition. Create economic stability by providing stimulus payments, by making sure that we raise the minimum wage, we are able to take care of us and the people that we love. And we know that women are the hearts of families and communities. And so when we are able to better take care of ourselves, our communities are better protected. And of course, this one is so timely. Protect our vote and protect our democracy to ensure that everyone has an easy access to the polls, not just in the presidential year, not just in the midterm year, but every time the polls open in your city, make sure it's easy for you to go and access that ballot. And so all that to say, not a single one of those issues are just a women issue, but all of those issues are people issues that are the priority for women, that we know women are saying, this is what I need. And we're the supermajority of this nation. And therefore, we should be prioritized in these conversations.
So, speaking of the pandemic, first of all, amen. Yes, we need to be done with this. We're 8 months in and counting, and
Oh,
it has been a hell of a year, and we are all exhausted.
yeah.
So, how do we keep women fired up to pay attention and to give this election everything that we've got?
Yet, first of all, I'm just processing the fact that you just said it's been 8 months since the pandemic started because it feels like it's been 10 years and like 10 days at the exact same time.
Mhm.
Um, but here, I'll put everything the supermajority does in this one little sentence. Women are a formidable political force. We have the power to elect new leadership at every level and decide this election. We as women, that is the power that we hold. And I'm just going to say it again, like, how do we keep women fired up to pay attention? It's simple. Remind them of the power that we carry. Women alone have donated more than $100 million to campaigns and causes. And that was 100 million more than I did in 2016. So we're seeing in just these 4 years, we're already seeing the power of women amplified everywhere we go. 1 in 5 Americans have participated in a march or protest since the last election. And the biggest issue being support of women's rights. Like, it's this thing where women, and not just women, but allies of women, are saying enough is enough. We're going to support our supermajority. And with that, it's time for us to take action in this way, where we say our voice will be heard. We will see you at the ballot booth, and you will make sure that we as women are a priority.
So when we're ready to take action, where do we start? What can we do?
Oh, there's so many things we can do. Laura, we are 19 days out from the election. That sounds insane to say, but we are 19 days out from the election. And one of the most critical things that we can be doing right now is calling women. The reason is there are still millions of women that have not had any type of contact, whether it's where is their voter registration deadline, where is their polling location, any of it. And we know women will decide this election. And some of these states will be decided by less than 10,000 people. So we want to make sure that we are contacting every single woman in this country to say, your vote matters. Here's how you can make sure you can access it. And so you can join us at Supermajority any day of the week while we do phone banking. And so you can go online to supermajority.com/supermajor and join us for calling, as we call throughout the Midwest and throughout the country, to help women just connect themselves to the resources they need to make their voice heard. That is going to be so key. And then the other thing that we can do, and one of the most important things we can do, is make sure we're talking to our friends and families, having conversations around what is your voter plan? Because a voter plan isn't just, I'm going to go vote. Yeah, because we're all going to say that. And then November 3rd comes around and you're like, crap, how far is my polling location? Wait, I don't actually have my ID. Wait, where is that at? You have to make a plan. And when you ask your friends and family, what is our plan? You're saying, what day are we going to go? A lot of our states have early voting or have absentee voting. So what day are we going to go? How are we going to vote? Are we going to vote early? Are we going to vote by mail? Are we going to vote on the day of? When? Where? Where is my polling location? Where do I need to drop the ballot off? Where is the ballot drop box? And with who? Give yourself an accountability partner, whether it's you're going to take pictures and selfies while you're in line waiting, or my favorite, your selfies with the absentee ballot, to say, this is our plan, because that limits the number of unexpected things that pop up, right? If you have, you know where you're going to go, you're not going to accidentally wait in line like I did in 2016 at the wrong location for an hour.
Oh no.
And then realize when you look up that they moved your polling location and that is not your precinct number and you have to go across town. When you make a plan, you avoid those really awkward conversations when you just walk out of line an hour later. It also makes sure that you have all the resources that you need. In some of our states, we need to have our voter ID with us and our state ID. In some of our states, if we're registering to vote in these last few days, we have to have our utility bill or a lease. And by making a plan, we know all the things that you need is right there ready to go. So you don't show up and not have the things that you need to cast that such important vote. And I'm going to be honest with you, in 2016 and in 2018, we saw this huge phenomenon where posting on social media actually made a difference. When you post that you are voting, the likelihood that your friends are going to go vote, or at least remember that they need to make a plan to vote, goes up. So post on social media that you're voting. Post your voting plan on social media, whether it's just a Snapchat or an Instagram post or a Facebook post. I do Facebook all the time to remind more people. Let them know that you are voting and that they have a voting ally in you. And then, of course, I want to see all of it. So just hashtag women are voting, and then Supermajority team and staff will be able to see and interact with all of your posts and engagements. But honestly, one of the biggest things we can do is contact women, talk to our friends and family. So I'm going to once again say, join us at supermajority.com/supermajor and help us contact these last 2 million women before election day, so we make sure that they know what they need before election day.
I love that, giving people FOMO with your I voted sticker. Like, it does work. You're so right. So another thing I want to ask you about, you've worked to mobilize young people to vote in the past, and we know that more than half of America's population are millennials or younger. So what are some of those reasons that young people tend not to vote, and how could it affect the election if young women voted in record numbers?
Okay. Oh, so many questions, so many great questions. First off, millennials could also decide this election. Millennials are now one of the largest voter blocks in this country, behind women and behind the baby boomer generation. Millennials have the ability to decide this election, but they don't vote at the same rates as every other generation. And there's a few reasons. One, every generation in their 20s voted at lower rates than they do now in their 50s or 60s. But honestly, Laura, you tell me, how would you feel if this was the first election you were voting in and this was all this craziness and chaos and COVID happening?
You might want to just ignore it. Yeah.
It's it's crazy and there's a lot going on. And you know, when we were all growing up and learning about politics, you went to the news, right? Or you went to the newspaper. And now millennials are forced to deal with a slew of misinformation and disinformation on social media that they now have to wade through to understand what's going on. And when I worked with youth, one of the things that someone told me that has stuck with me for years is voting feels like a test that I'm destined to fail. People don't know how they're supposed to register or where they're supposed to register. When you live on a college campus, you're like, well, I live here all year. Do I register to vote at mom's house or at my dorm? Am I legally allowed to vote at my dorm? Okay, well, what does that do? And that's confusing, right? And you're putting up barriers. Or frankly, I've had people tell me they just don't know what to do when they get there, which makes them uncomfortable. And so one of the biggest things we can do when we're talking to our millennial voters is to help prepare them. Remember that we all went into a ballot booth the first time and kind of looked around like, what do I do with this big piece of paper? And just remind them, you can find your ballot in most states online, so you can review it beforehand. Remind them in most states, you can also register to vote at your college campus dorm, and just encouraging them, because no one wants to do things that is wildly confusing and weird. And help by combating that misinformation with them and helping people and connecting people with resources. It's one of the things that we do at Supermajority. Like, how do you identify that misinformation? Because there is so much going on right now. And with social media added on, you can have 12 versions of one thing within 10 minutes, all on your cell phone. And how do you know which one is true? So, but the thing is, the power of millennials, we've seen it. I mean, the March for Our Lives, those 16-year-olds mobilized this entire country in 1 year. They were in like 30 different states, had marches on Washington, had policy written. So we know millennials are powerful. We know millennials have demands for our electoral process, and we know that they want to engage. So the goal is just, let's remove some of these barriers. Let's make it not confusing, and let's encourage them to join in with us. It's one of those things where, one, it's historically true. People vote less when they're 20 than they do when they're 60. But it's also, this is a lot of craziness right now. I don't know about all of you guys' states, but in some states across this country, voter laws have changed 5 times in this week. That is hard to keep track of, especially when it's your first election. So by keeping your friends and family involved, and by doing that thing that we talked about of texting your friends and say, hey, what's your voter plan? Or texting your niece and nephew and say, did you remember to register? Because we're also used to voting every 2 years, every 4 years. If they're 19, they've never actually done the process before. So while they know that there's an election coming up, they may not remember they need to register now, or remember that they have to actually go and get paperwork before they can do it in states that have a voter ID requirement. So just by having those simple conversations, you're bridging those gaps. Because I'll tell you, millennials want to be heard and they have demands that will be heard. We just have to make sure we connect them with our communities.
I love talking about the election like it being an open book test. Because
Yes.
if you're voting early or you're voting absentee, even if you're at the polls on November 3rd, you have the information, you have the ability to find out everything that you want to know about these people. If you have your absentee ballot and you're sitting at home, Google everybody, find out whatever you can about them. It's not like something where you're just expected to magically know everything about every candidate that's on that whole ballot. You have that information at your fingertips.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where we know that, but do they? Or where do you find the information? Or one of my favorites, I always say you have to make sure you fill in the bubbles on the ballot like you do for the ACT and not a check mark.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a big one. Just simple things like that takes away some of the barriers, because why would you want to go do something that's confusing and that you don't actually know what to expect? If you've never seen a ballot before and now there's like all this pressure and everyone's kind of standing around, it feels intimidating. But if we pull up the ballot online and show you, okay, yeah, these are all the offices, here's how you can find the information. Like you said, Laura, it's an open book test. You can go on any website to find any information about these people. And you can also find the test online. You can find the ballot. I looked at mine yesterday. So it's just that breaking down the barriers and having those conversations and communications with students and with young people, that is the key to getting 18 to 22-year-olds involved and reminding them how powerful they are as a collective.
When my husband and I filled out our absentee ballots a couple weeks ago, we made sure to have my daughter, who's 6 years old, come and like be a part of that, just so she sees what that process is like. When I was a kid, I would go to the polls with my parents, and it felt like kind of a like secret, scary thing. But we're trying to open it up and talk about things. And she talks about some candidates more than she probably should. Opinions already.
Well, aren't they all opinionated at that age?
Oh, yes. Yeah, she knows a lot.
I feel like 4 to 7 is really just a teenager miniature size.
Exactly. So tell me, are there any other things about this election that you think that women should know that maybe they don't know?
Voter suppression is real and rampant. So I hate that this is our conversation now. So voter suppression is a genuine concern in all 50 states and in all of our territories. We've seen it in recent elections. We're seeing it happen in this election. Women of color, women across this country, minorities, youth continue to fight against all forms of voter suppression with voter ID laws, long lines at the voting booth, outdated machines, voter roll purges, and just like I said before, the pure basic confusing nature of elections at this point. It makes it so hard to access your ballot. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people purged from the rolls. So when they show up to go vote, they're not registered and they thought they were. In this country, voting is one of our fundamental rights. But too often the line between privilege and right gets blurred, because we know in order to stand in line for 11 hours, you have to be able to stand in line for 11 hours, whether that means be away from your home for 11 hours or take off work for that amount of time or have transportation to get to and from there if you have to get there at 6 a.m. and leave at 11 p.m. There are barriers that are in place just with those long lines. And there are some states, I mean, in Michigan, November usually includes some snow. So if you're standing in line for 6, 7 hours and it's a blizzard going on, I don't know, not a lot of people are not going to do that. Or when you have to have voter ID laws or signature laws that makes it so it's so incredibly hard to meet the barrier. We're blurring that line between right and privilege, because every American citizen has the right to vote in every election. And yet there's so much voter suppression around that we forget that sometimes. This year, is 100 years since women, and we'll say primarily white women, were given the right to vote. In 1965, Black women were able to gain their right to vote, and we've still seen that fight occur for Native women and Indigenous populations. Yet 55 years later, after the Voting Rights Act, we still see intimidation and disenfranchisement and voter suppression at every level, at every state. And the pandemic, as you're saying, we're 8 months in, almost all of the primary elections took place in the pandemic. It has complicated our voting systems as we don't really have a system to navigate all the stuff that's going on. And no one, I'm going to say this very firmly, no one should choose between their right to vote and their health. We need to have an ability for people to actually cast their vote because it is their right, but also protect their health, right? And we know the ways we can do that. We praise the ways that it's occurring in certain states, but we don't all take it up, or we don't all protect it by expanding voter registration to include online and same day registration, having early voting periods so people can vote online, vote or not online, no, vote on weekends or curbside, because not everyone wants to stand in a line with 100,000 people and there's a pandemic happening. No excuse absentee. No one should have to come up with a reason why they do not want to go in line with 10,000 people in the middle of a pandemic. We should just be having no excuse absentee that has free postage for every state, for every voter. And policies to protect, you know, voter intimidation or adjustments or changes of polling locations in this time, because we know that they're going to most impact our vulnerable communities, our disabled voters, our low income communities. And these are all basic voter protections that in some states have already been in place. Some states have not been followed through. In other states, we have to start making sure that voter protection is the forefront of our conversation every year.
It's completely wild to me that all of the rules and about voting vary so much by state. Where I live in Minnesota, we don't have to have any reason to vote absentee. It's available to everyone, and it's amazing. And it's hard to see why other states wouldn't also want to adopt that, make it as easy as possible for everyone to be able to vote. But again, like you said, voter suppression is very real, and it happens in so many different ways.
Well, funny enough, one of my favorite things, I learned this year. We all think that voter registration deadlines are just a thing that has to exist. And then there are states that has no voter registration deadline. And there are some states in the Midwest that has that. You're just registered to vote. That's just the thing. There are countries that has that. And so very simple things like not requiring everyone to register every couple of years. Or like you said, no reason absentee, so you can just go access your ballot. Those things make a huge difference every election.
Mm-hmm. So kind of switching gears a little bit here, but question that we like to ask everybody is, what do you think that women need most right now?
Okay, women need most right now. I think women need to continue to join together in community with one another and to lean on one another and to take that collective power not only to the polling booth November 3rd, but as we are, in the lame duck session and into the next 4 years and in between elections, remembering that collective power that we have and remembering that community to say, we're going to make demands of our elected leaders so that we are the forefront of policy and that we are the forefront of conversations. And I think that starts with women needs to feel a sense of community beyond just our collective at our homes. And So I think that's what we need right now. We need that larger community. We need that reminder of our power. We need that amplification of our voice. And we can amplify our voices when we're together in community. And so, yeah, we need to remind ourselves of the communities that we have and need to lean on each other in these moments.
I agree wholeheartedly. Um, well, thank you so much, Talis, for being on the podcast today. It's so inspiring to hear about the work that you're doing and everything that Supermajority is doing, and learning about how women can get involved and realize that power that we really do have. So, for lady bosses who are listening, tell us where they can find more information if they want to get involved, and tell us about what you've got going on this weekend.
Yes. So I'm going to start off with this weekend because it's honestly, it's so exciting and I am so ready to see how it goes. This Saturday, October 17th, Supermajority is hosting Women Are Voting. And what is that? Because it's Women Are Voting. We've been voting for a couple weeks now. We are gathering an entire community of women across the country to do a few things. One, make those crucial phone calls that we were talking about to connect to those women all across the nation to remind them of all the resources that they need, but also to take our pod squads because it is COVID to go cast our votes, whether that's by early voting, whether that's by dropping off your absentee ballot at the ballot drop box or the clerk's office, or even just simply making a plan with your family. So if it's sitting down with your roommate or with your husband and saying, hey, what is our plan to go vote next week? How are we going to do this? We are gathering an entire community and team and just powerhouse of women to go and say women are voting and to show the entire world the power of women in the United States this election. And so how do you get involved, right? That's the big question. So there's a few ways. One, if you're going to be voting on that day, if you're going to have your election day be October 17th, you can go online and take photos and hashtag women are voting and hashtag supermajority. And then we can see all the women everywhere that are voting and we can have that virtual community because if all of us hashtag women are voting, when we go and search it, we get to see all of the badass women all across this country that are voting in the ways that they are voting with their communities. If you want to phone bank with us, you can go online and join us at supermajority.com, and we will be phone banking with everyone across this country to say, hey guys, election day is 17 days away. Are you ready? And just kind of doing that. So I'm going to pull up that link for you guys, and I'm going to also have Laura send it to Laura so that she also can give it out. But are you ready? All right. So the link is mobilize.us/supermajority. So once again, it's mobilize.us/supermajority. And then you'll find it where phone banks, women are voting. And that's where we're going to be spending 8 hours together in community. And don't worry, you don't have to stay for the whole 8 hours. You can jump in and out. We'll be there the whole 8 hours though. We'll have music, we'll have games, and we'll be calling women all across the country, calling women in Michigan, calling women in Pennsylvania, Arizona, you name it, telling them, hey, you have this power, you have this voice. And then you can always, if you want to get involved more, you can go online to supermajority.com/supermajor. And so, but I really, really am excited. I'm going to actually get up and show you guys our Women All In shirts because I am so amplified about this Saturday to see all of the women all over the country voting. So Laura, I'm hoping that I get to see a photo of you online on Saturday as well. Just hashtag women are voting and we're all going to be doing it. And I can't wait to see everyone else's. So yeah, just make sure you make a plan with your family. Take photos and show them off to the world. Because remember that social pressure we talked about of, if you're voting, your friends are more likely to vote. we're going to utilize that social pressure and that social power of saying women are voting. And then join us for phone banking this Saturday. And then if you want to join us in community and with volunteering actions from now until the election and beyond, go online to supermajority.com/supermajors.
I can't wait. I've been holding on to my I voted sticker that I got. So now I know I can use it on Saturday.
Yes, yes. I personally take them from everyone in my family. Because then I'm like, we will take the photos on Saturday. We will do them on Saturday. But no, I am so excited. I love the I voted stickers.
Thanks again for what you're doing. And thank you for being on the Ladyboss podcast. It was so great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to chat with you.
Good luck this weekend.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.